Oh, and then it turns out, well, they've both got some kind of disability. So what now? Like, I know that word has come up quite a few times um, in reference to Jada and Amber Heard. And as awful as they look right now, I can't help thinking how much our perspective changes over time. You know, look where we are with Janet Jackson. So instead of like bringing alopecia down to the level of baldness, maybe you should be bringing baldness up to the level of alopecia. Hi everybody, and welcome back to Project Uninvisible. So I want to talk about this Oscars situation. I thought this was especially relevant to this channel because there is a invisible disability aspect at play here. So part of the reason we kept hearing for why Jada was so upset by this joke was that she has alopecia and she'd recently come out talking about it. I don't know, in my mind it seemed like this was a relatively recent diagnosis, but then she completely shaved her head already, and I saw this, I don't know if it was like a still frame or a clip where she's like pointing out the line where there's hair missing. I had my hair down to a buzz cut years ago, and I had lines like that too, but I think it was caused from just like twisting the hair and causing a lot of breakage. And I felt like the lines I saw on her head were not bigger than the lines I saw on my head, but I don't know, maybe she has more of them, maybe her hair is like overall thinner. I'm guessing if she shaved her head that it had gotten to the point where it needed to be shaved, because I feel like she wouldn't just jump on that and go like all out from the start if it wasn't necessary. Like, I think hair is just such a huge, meaningful thing, and disability is such a stigmatized thing that I just can't picture someone saying, oh yeah, like maybe I could wear my hair for a bit longer, but I'm gonna go ahead and shave it like, earlier just to be able to come out in public and get some attention from that. So I don't think, I don't feel like she was exaggerating the extent of the alopecia. There was a video that came out where, she's talking about like, oh yeah, I love my bald head, and, I'm gonna like wear it proud and rock it, but I feel like that was one of those like fake it till you make it kind of moments. Like, she needed to say that to convince herself because she's still working on actually getting to where she believes that herself. And I think her response to the joke is what proves that. It's not that I saw any hints in that original clip, but I think if she was totally at ease with it, she would have laughed with the joke. But I think it's much more likely, like, again, she could have had alopecia for years already, and it was just like really mild. Like, I don't know what the sort of like path or speed of progression for alopecia is. But I would say like that time where it's milder and you can just kind of ignore it, it's like you don't even register yourself that you're dealing with a disability. Like, you just think, oh, it's like some nuisance in my life, and like what can I use to kind of patch it over for now. But I think from like the time where it really started to impact her life and she had to make this choice to shave her head, that starts a completely different phase of disability where, you know, for the first time you have to actually be confronted with your disability and like stop and think, you know, what does this mean? How is your life as you knew it going to completely change? What struggles are you going to have to deal with that just refuse to go away? You know, there's a lot of difficult layers that come into play at that point. And I think that's the point where she just now got to when she made that video, which I think was like a few weeks before the Oscars. And I think from that point, from what I see in general, it usually takes a few years before you get to the point where you're really like, you know, totally comfortable with yourself. Because, you know, of course we've been conditioned a certain way our entire lives. So yeah, I mean, I would not be surprised if, you know, she could live with alopecia for the next 10 years and have nothing but positive media attention and still struggle to accept it. But given the circumstances, given that this sort of like escalation of the illness is still very new for her, and yeah, I mean, they've been getting quite a bit of hate in the media for years, you know, so it's not like that just started either. So, you know, that's another stressor that can also aggravate the condition. That, you know, stress and trauma can even trigger certain illnesses. So, you know, just based on that, I would not expect her to truly be comfortable unless she was the type of person who had just always lived her life in this sort of like come as you are type of attitude where she never worried about looking a certain way, which is absolutely not her, you know? I know Ricky Gervais made a comment that, you know, if alopecia is a disability, then so is baldness. Well, I mean, from what I hear, there's a lot of men who are very insecure about their baldness. And I know that that's partially a societal issue, but actually, if you learn about the social model of disability, you realize that all disability is actually a societal issue. So it's not really that far of a stretch to say that alopecia is just as disabling as, I don't know, psoriasis or something, and that baldness is, you know, pretty much as disabling as alopecia, just that women don't expect to have to deal with baldness unless they choose it. You know, so that, I guess the fact that that would probably have never been something on her mind that she was mentally prepared for, you know, I think for me personally, that would make it a lot more difficult if it was just like sprung on me all of a sudden. You know, he's comparing it to baldness as if to say, well, baldness is not such a big deal because it's so common, but I think that underestimates baldness, because I think a lot of people do really struggle with baldness, you know? So instead of like bringing alopecia down to the level of baldness, maybe you should be bringing baldness up to the level of alopecia. Okay, so the next thing was that came out that Chris Rock is like neurodivergent or something. I think that is exactly where things get complicated, because we want to say, oh, Chris Rock, this able-bodied person or whatever, non-disabled person, did something to someone with a disability. Oh, and then it turns out, well, they both got some kind of disability. So what now? I think that would be really interesting if we would just sit down and dissect that and what it really means. And, maybe talk about the fact that like a quarter of the population lives with some kind of disability. So shouldn't the other 3/4 get to know a little bit about it? Like, why are we not talking about this? What I find really telling is that they started off saying, oh, the issue was he made fun of Jada, who has a disability. But here's my thing. They say that this was triggered by disability, and that's why like we'll rush to her defense. My thing is, if it was really about disability, I feel like, first of all, Will had no idea, what she was upset about. So for him to like rush on stage, I would say, I feel like the general consensus at this point, like we're all on the same page. Like, Will rush the stage because probably he had been feeling emasculated and he felt like he had something to prove, and like he needed to do that, or like, I don't know, maybe this is an impossible situation no matter how it goes, but if he doesn't react, it's gonna be worse for him somehow. Or maybe there were no thoughts in his mind that he just saw red and went for it, and he couldn't have told you what he just did. Just that in itself already says to me that this has nothing to do with disability. I feel like disability never even should have been blamed as like the thing that set this off. I feel like if it had actually been about disability and he really wanted to run up there and really grab people's attention, I think he could have gone up there and grabbed the mic, or taken Chris and brought him down to Jada, taken Jada up to Chris, something like that, to bring the two of them together, and then let Jada explain to Chris what he did wrong. Or, maybe not even like, okay, on the one hand, doing it right there in front of a global audience, that could have been a huge moment. Like, if he wanted to try to educate people about alopecia, that would have been like a game changer. But it wasn't anything like that. It wasn't like, it wasn't, oh, let me tell you how my wife has been suffering, how she's crying and mourning what she's lost, or let her tell you this, or, out of the spotlight, telling him privately, or encouraging Jada to go speak to him when she's ready, something like that. Like, I want to say he shouldn't necessarily speak for her, but sometimes it actually is really nice when you've been fighting this battle all on your own to have someone else step in and come to your defense. And I think that's something that he could have done beautifully in that moment if that had been what it was really about. But as we all know, it wasn't, which is a shame, if you ask me. Yeah, as for the rest, I think I feel like people understand at this point that it had nothing to do with disability. It's really mainly about the tension between the two of them. But I feel like a really big part of it is just the pressure from people. People have been giving them a really hard time for years now. And I mean, that has got to be incredibly difficult to put up with. They took a real risk being very open about things they do that are not so typical, and people did not respond well to it. And I don't think that means that they should be, kind of like branded as these evil people. I don't know. I think all of the people who are just like eating up this drama should really, like, as entertaining as it can be, like, just take a pause and think about the humanity of it here. Like, for example, they made a decision together to be in an open marriage where they could both sleep with other people. And everybody's acting like she cheated on him because they're not familiar with this concept. And just because you have no idea what to make of this because you're not really sure what they're talking about, it doesn't mean you just make some generalization and put them in a totally different category that they do not fit in. And I think it's a lot of stuff like that where people are misinterpreting things and just jumping to conclusions. What they're doing, I mean, yeah, okay, in their case, it's not working, but having an open relationship could be a lot less toxic for a lot of relationships, Or, I don't know, look at it this way. Their relationship could have been so much worse if it weren't an open relationship. We don't, we can't... But just like blaming Jada as a cheater is not at all accurate, and it doesn't serve any purpose either. I don't want to defend the way she's treating Will, but at the same time, we also know that she never wanted to be in the marriage in the first place. So how can people blame her and call her evil for coming to resent him after 25 years? Like, that just baffles me. Like, how could you not expect resentment in that relationship if they were forced to be together? Of course, that doesn't just, like, give her a free pass on anything. But what really concerns me is the way people seem to just not have any sense of nuance when it comes to stuff. I think it's like vitally important that we bring nuance into situations that we're trying to understand, because pretty much everything in life is nuanced. It's not just black and white, it's shades of gray. And if you want to reduce it to black and white, you're losing all these shades of gray in between. And maybe what you're talking about is more in between than black or white, and you just can't express that without nuance. You can't immediately flip to the other side like that. Like, it's essentially erasing everything in the middle. And it leads to quickly demonizing people like this. People are like literally calling them witches and just, no, that was Black Mirror, but they're definitely calling them bitches and saying they're crazy and evil. Like, I know that word has come up quite a few times. in reference to Jada and Amber Heard. And as awful as they look right now, I can't help thinking how much our perspective changes over time. You know, look where we are with Janet Jackson now. We're like, oh, of course, you know, they tried to demonize this black woman instead of the white man, and you know, like, we're more critical of Justin for never apologizing than we are for Janet because it happened. And we look back at the articles and we're like, why would we, like, how could we even have put the blame on her for something like that that clearly goes far beyond anything that could have solely been her fault? Or, you know, why is it like she's instantly transformed into Satan over an accident that lasted less than a second? Like, I don't know, it's just like, yeah, you can lose value in people's eyes just like that, but anyways, yeah, I really wish this had been taken as an opportunity to raise more awareness about disability. Unfortunately, it hasn't been, but hey, there's still time. People are still talking about it. So if any little birdies feel like whispering in their ears, y'all should suggest that they, you know, try to build up some goodwill by educating the people and make life a little bit easier for us not so famous disabled people. Anyways, I'm technically taking a break right now, so there will not be another video coming next week, but there are 100+ videos already on this channel that you guys can go and check out. You can also join us on Discord, or if you go through my link tree, you can find my other link tree for my other platform about language learning and traveling to the best of my disabled ability.